Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, Housing, and convenes this public hearing. Public hearing notice for Bill 249 and Bill 210 were given to the media on Thursday, November 21st. Second notice on Monday, November 25th. And for the record, today is Friday, November 29th, and the time now is 9:05. Committee will hear and accept testimony, both oral and written, on the following. Bill 249-35, introduced by Senator Kelly Mars Taitano, co-sponsored by Speaker Tina Rose Mooney Barnes, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Jose Pito Terlay, Senator Clint Rigel, and myself. An act to add a new section to 85-102 of Chapter 85, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to designating the Council on the Arts and Humanities as the state arts agency for Guam, to add a new N to Section 85102 of Chapter 8, Title 1, Guam Code Annotated, relative to defining the term works of art in the art in public buildings law, and to amend Section 852A2C of Chapter 6, Title 1, Guam Code Annotated, relative to allowing the use of money collected therein for travel to FESPAC. Also, Bill 210, that's 35, introduced by Senator Therese M. Terlay, an act to appropriate the balance of the Hospital Capital Improvement Fund to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority for capital improvement projects. I'd like to acknowledge the senators present. I have Senator Kelly Mars Taitano to my far left, and Senator Pito Terlay to my immediate left, and to my far right, I have Senator Tello Taitagui, and my immediate right would be Senator Therese Terlay. General rules for public hearing. The conduct of this public hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of sign up on the sign-in sheet. Written testimony may be read lengthy. Written testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide our legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you are done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the panel. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all members in the public hearing room for this proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and may be asked to leave or be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on, that you speak to the microphone. And you first start with stating your name for the record. We will begin with Bill 249. And we have signed up Ms. Anne Marie. Ma'am, please come forward. And Jackie Balbas. Okay. And before you begin testimony, I would ask the sponsor of the bill to please provide her opening statement.
Saina Maasi, Mr. Chair, and Seduis Maasi to everybody for coming out this morning. I know that braving the traffic and getting all the way here, preparing the testimony, thinking about the bill, these are all substantial commitments, and I appreciate your ability to do so and willingness to do so regarding this bill. So, Public Law 1622, it designates CAHA as the state agency for arts for Guam. Since CAHA's inception in the 1980s, for over 2 generations, every governor has appointed CAHA as the lead agency to plan and organize our participation in FESPAC. While Guam has participated in FESPAC for going on 50 years, nearly half a century at this point, and while we owe FESPAC so much, as the main catalyst for Chamorro cultural revitalization, wherein culture is a main feature of our tourism brand. And while CAHA has had so much success as the lead agency, The current process for preparing and are participating in FESPAC has some severe shortcomings. In the current process, Guam must wait for years to be invited by the host country, despite knowing which country will be hosting years ahead of time. For example, when we go in 2020, they will be officially announcing there the next country that will be hosting. So we'll have 4 years of prior knowledge. Then CAHA must wait for the governor to accept this invitation. And finally, CAHA must wait further for months and perhaps even years until the governor then appoints them as the lead agency. As we see this time around, this process has delayed preparations for FESPAC, which ideally would have started perhaps 3 years ago. Now we are at an extreme disadvantage because it was just partway through this year that those processes were able to take place. Bill 249 resolves this major problem. As the recognized lead agency for planning and administering Guam's participation in FESPAC, CAHA will now have the authority to begin organization according to the needs of FESPAC and not outside circumstances over which they have no control, and which are vulnerable to many considerations and situations, such as transitions in administrations, which can create great disruptions and delays that undermine efficiency and efficacy. Bill 249 also clarifies the various forms of art that the Percent for the Arts, which CAHA administers, supports. Many misrepresent the program to only support static, tangible art like what you would see in a gallery. However, the reality is that it has and is meant to support the fostering of culture and the arts, including traditional arts, performance arts, and the like, that you would see perhaps in a theater, a hotel, the Chamorro Village, and various other locations around the island. This is indeed an important feature of the program. For not only do those art forms make up a significant amount of types of art, but they constitute many of the types of art that are Chamorro art forms. Surely to discriminate against the art of the indigenous people of this island, upon whose homeland we all live, would be a moral injustice. We as a government have a moral responsibility to ensure the continuation of Chamorros as a people and ensure the survival of their language, culture, and traditional knowledge and expression of and expressions, including its art forms. For decades, Percent for the Arts monies have been used for various types of art programs, and if I'm not mistaken, in 2016, they were used to some degree for FESPAC as well. With FESPAC being the largest cultural and traditional arts program that our community participate in, it only makes sense to allow CAHA the flexibility that, when their board deems it prudent and necessary, that they have the authority and ability to use some of the Percent of the Arts monies to ensure the success of our participation in FESPAC. Further, this also makes Percent of the Arts equitable to other local programs that allow for travel of individuals representing Guam for cultural, educational, and other purposes, such as the Off-Island Educational Training and Cultural Enhancement Program. To hinder one agency while others had needed flexibility, or one program while others have needed flexibility, undermines CAHA's ability to adequately foster culture and the arts, in particular, Chamorro cultural arts. However, this flexibility should not be considered the answer to permanently funding our participation in FESPAC. This is an unusual year for arts funding for CAHA. Many, if not most years, CAHA receives absolutely no percent for the arts monies that it can apply to cultural and other art programs. Rather, Bill 158 provides long-term funding structure whereby the government of Guam and the people of Guam set aside relatively small amount each month so that there is stability, consistency, and assurance that going forward, we as a government are finally preparing for our participation in FESPAC in a responsible way. This also thereby allows CAHA and the artists to focus on representing Guam to the best of their ability, showcasing with pride Guam's Chamorro heritage. Surely it is not in our community's interest to neglect this responsibility, which past legislatures in their wisdom have recognized and cemented in CAHA's Enabling Act. CAHA has some 40 years of a proven track record of planning and organizing our off-island participation in FESPAC. Owing to CAHA's successes in this area, FESPAC has been largely responsible for the revitalization of the Chamorro culture and the recapturing of aspects of Chamorro culture, long lost to colonialism, missionization, and modernization. Our youth are being inspired and given strong senses of cultural identity and pride. From this, we have recognized masters of traditional arts, many of which are masters of recaptured traditional arts. And we have a growing body of youth who, after participating in FESPAC, are cultural warriors, not only perpetuating the culture, but are themselves now making healthy, productive life choices and are inspiring others and encouraging others to as well. This is incredibly important in an island where our suicide, drug and other abuse, and teenage pregnancies, among other social issues, occur at a far higher rate than the rest of the nation. Studies have shown that when we invest in programs that connect one to their cultural identities, thereby providing that strong sense of worth, that we are making progress in solving those problems like suicide, drug and other abuse, and teenage pregnancies and the like. Each participation in FESPAC is audited. CAHA board members are artists and others committed to providing vibrant and meaningful cultural and art programs to our community, and they take their responsibility seriously, as do CAHA staff, most of whom have been there for numerous years and have worked with dedication and their hearts. Some, such as the acting director, have been there for 30 years or more. We as leaders are not just here to ensure due diligence, although of course that is important, but we are here to make sure that the government lives up to its moral responsibility of ensuring the survival as Chamorros as a people, as well as the survival of their language, traditional knowledge, and expressions of culture. I call upon the leaders here and those leaders who will vote on this bill and Bill 158 to live up to our moral obligation by ensuring that CAHA has the tools it needs to adequately serve the arts and the Chamorro people, and to be part of the solution in addressing our growing social issues on this island that exist to a large degree because of a loss of sense of identity and pride in who they are in this fast-paced, globalizing world. Saina ma'asi, Mr. Chair, for letting me provide the opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Marcet. I'd like to also recognize Senator Jim Williams has joined us this morning. We have also listed here, Ms. Flores, you're already here. Senator Hope, did you plan on testifying? Okay, so if you can please go ahead and come forward, because we're going to start in the order that I've identified names, and we also have Mr. Ken Guerrero here. If you can please go ahead and come up, and you'll be basically the last one to sign up, so you're the last one to speak. So, Ms. Ann, if I'm correct, you're the first one, and then Ms. Babas, and then Ms. Flores. Or, yeah, Ms. Flores, and then Hope, Senator Hope, and then Ken Youngberg will speak. All right, Ann, go ahead.
Menana Sizos. Menana Sizos. Sizos Masi Guausi Anne Marie Arceo representa i Departamento Kahoganan Samoro. Kumu Guahu Gome Lului i Festival of the Pacific Gwinigi para i 2020 na sakani mamala. I am here to again represent and carry out my duty that I will see through and responsibility as the head of delegation for the upcoming Festival of the Pacific 2020. Although CAHA is not under Department of Chamorro Affairs watch anymore, we continue to work together to transition into our separation and the reorganization of Department of Chamorro Affairs. And so with that fact, I'm here to support Bill 24935 in these aspects. Finenina, naggof preciso na dan importante na taripara mano na gaigihit pagu kumo manataw tano dan hafa malagota para mo na para mamala na henerasyon tisina na tasiga humasu pagu na ora utumuna toro I tempo kumekuntu salapi para hafa para tatsogui lo gi utumuni dia I toro masusesedi famagonda Pago na tempo ni ti pareo I pinagsainia dan hita pago ni tatungo I hinengisia tatungo I inafamalik I respeto taza salapi sinya fumahan ano. I know and I understand that budget is everything for what we do, but at the end of the day, money cannot buy the respect and the self-identity and cultural strength that we as the government and the people of Guam as adults have a responsibility to pass on to the next generation. And so just in that overarching perspective, besides just going into the details, FESPAC is just one avenue, but it's a major avenue that has contributed to where we are at today for over 30 years that it's been going on. I know for a fact in all the over 30 years that I've been an advocate of Chamorro language and culture, that FESPAC was the root or has been the contributor to the root of where we are at today as far as our revitalization and restoration of our language and culture. In this hunger that our youth and the young people have to know who they are, the longing to restore who they are, that everything and anything having to do with arts and culture today is what allows our young generation now to thrive in any way. They have that's the connection that they have. Any way that they have a connection, whether it's through art, especially through the arts. And so, in putting on that or seeing through that perspective, I ask all of us here, senators, Senator Rogel, Senator Taitagui, Telo, Senator Terlahi, Therese, Teluhu, Senator San Agustin, Uncle Pedro, Senator Terlahi, Senator Marsh, and Senator Moylan. I ask you to humbly put on the eyes of our youth and what they long for, and that we put aside all differences to look at and make a decision today on what could impact them the most. And I really believe that although FESPAC is just one avenue, it's a major avenue that contributes to who our children are. They get rooted. This is a place and a time that they get rooted in language and culture that they don't know, because they're able to see other countries who are strong in their identity, and they come back home bringing that spirit home with them. And imagine the youth taking over our places today in that strength of understanding who they are, taking it just from even something as simple as FESPAC, as grand as FESPAC, simple but grand. And so I'm in support of this bill, and that also the correct authorities be given to CAHA as the lead agency. As I've seen in my involvement in the last 30 years, all the back and forth and the, confusion over who's going to do what and when do we do it. I think we should establish after so many years that CAHA has been the lead agency and that their work needs to be prioritized, and that it's not just art. It leads to the well-being of our kids, of our youth, of who we are, even us today, those of you that do not speak, those of us that do not speak or understand, totally or complete in our self-identity, even as adults, that CAHA has a major role in this point in time of our revitalization, if that is indeed what we want as a people. And so not to take it lightly that, CAHA is just the arts agency or just the, agency that pushes grants. It's more than that. It's more than that. It goes deeper than that. It touches the being of our children and our youth longing to know who they are. And so for this reason, I can see a little deeper in the 30 years that of my experience in advocacy, that their role in being lead agency and all the experience they bring to the table, that they be given this authority justly for all the work that they've contributed in all the years that has never been recognized really, that they have played a role in just the few staff members that they are. They've done great work to bring us to where we're at today. And so the time has come for them to be recognized. The time has come for them to be given the credit that is due to them for the contributions that they've given to restoring self-identity through the arts. And as far as this coming 2020 FESPAC, I appreciate as head of delegation all the support that we could get in seeing through this FESPAC with the disadvantage that we've had of the transition, for new administration and the late planning. We are tediously working on fundraising ideas, fundraising planning, and getting in-kind sponsorship. However, because it's really late, we meet every week diligently working on this, but because it's so, with the little time that we have for planning, we appreciate any help we can get and support to just see 2020 FESPAC through. And if this bill takes place, then we don't have to worry like this in the future. We won't have to, work as hard, because then the artists can focus on their work and bring the best of Guam where they're gonna go. And they won't need to worry so much. And yes, they would have to fundraise at some point and maybe somehow give them responsibility for that in a sense, or the committee that's planning. However, the support of our government also is due, and I'd like to link that to the work even of tourism, that when we want to represent, who do we go to? We go to the artists. They're the ones who bring the true representation of who we are. And if it weren't for the grounding and the foundation work of CAHA and the arts, who does, for example, GVB have to call on? Just our artists, right? And so if the funding has to come from there too, or maybe however way it's done, multiple, avenues of funding, that this be considered that it's not just that they're artists and they're dancers or they're, visual artists or weavers, that they really bring who we are and they will represent us. And they are called on all the time to represent us. So where we put this funding is very, very essential in looking at it a little deeper than just the surface. They need our support so they can focus on their work too. And so with this, I'd like to close my testimony to say that as head of delegation for FESPAC 2020, I will strive to continue to be responsible to see this through. As CAHA takes lead in the future, I am sure that everything will fall into the right hands, in the right place, in the right order, so that we don't have to run across these struggles anymore of who's supposed to do what and who's supposed to fundraise or where the money is supposed to come from, as we look at the entirety of where it will bring us in the next 4 years again. This FESPAC will definitely, and I promise you, because like every FESPAC has, will make an impact on the participants. The 100 delegates that go, every single one of them will be impacted and bring back home something that will bring us to the next 4 years again, that will restore even more, a greater percentage again of our self-identity. And in our revitalization, they will be able to contribute and maybe even take some of our places here today as leaders in our community. Sidus Maasi.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I'd like to also recognize Senator Clinton Joe has joined us, also a co-sponsor on the bill. Ms. Babas, ma'am.
Hafaday, Chairman San Agustin, Senator Marsh Taitano, Senator Moylan, Senator Talahi, Senator Taitakwi, Senator Bajel, and Senator Talahi. As the acting director of CAHA, I come before you to provide testimony for Bill number 249-35. Guam has participated in every festival of Pacific arts and culture known as FESPAC since its inception in 1972. It is important that Guam continue to participate in FESPAC because it is the platform for cultural practitioners and leaders to come together to not only share their culture and heritage with one another, but more importantly, to share ideas that best protect and preserve the indigenous language and cultures of the Pacific people, to educate them and to foster that knowledge for future generations. CAHA has had the privilege to serve as the lead agency for most of the previous FESPACs. I agree that the Council should be identified as the lead agency for planning and administrating Guam's participation at this festival. This will enable CAHA to begin organizing efforts for Guam's representation at future festivals well in advance. I concur with the long-term commitment proposed in Bill number 158 that money should be set aside for FESPAC every year. However, there are certain specifics in Bill 249 that I feel need to be amended. With the 13th FESPAC being only 7 months away, I support the administration's recommendation that the Percent for the Arts monies be used for FESPAC. The bill should be revised to reflect that Percent for the Arts funds be used specifically only for the Festival of Pacific Arts 2020 and not for future FESPACs. Furthermore, I believe that the Percent for the Arts should not be the primary funding source for upcoming festivals. Currently, with the Percent for the Arts, owners/developers that must comply with the statute have only two options. 1% of the total cost of construction, remodeling, or renovation of buildings over 100,000 that are supported by local or federal funds or are beneficiaries of any government subsidies such as the Qualifying Certificate Program must utilize those funds either towards the purchase of local art created by our artists through a selection process facilitated by the Council, or the monies can be given directly to CAHA. Many of the government agencies that have complied opted to purchase local artwork to be showcased in their facilities. With the inclusion of genres other than visual arts per Public Law 33-235, CAHA is working with the Office of Senator Marsh Taitano to amend the current Percent for the Arts rules and regulations. CAHA does not receive monies on an annual or consistent basis through this program. To date, the Council has received Percent for the Arts money from GRMC because they are a qualifying certificate beneficiary. GRMC used some of those funds to purchase local artwork for the hospital. They also made payments to CAHA in installments that were spread out over a certain period of time. CAHA would like to use the Percent for the Arts program to expand our programs and develop new initiatives that will benefit Guam artists, cultural practitioners, arts organizations, and the people of Guam, as well as build a permanent home for the Council. Percent for the Arts funding is not stable, and we may not have monies for future FESPACs. The passage of this bill would obligate Percent for the Arts funds for future FESPACs. Alternative funding sources other than the Percent for the Arts should be considered. There should also be a threshold on the amount of the Percent for the Arts monies that can be utilized for this FESPAC 2020. I recognize that in a time of economic disparity and limited resources, precautionary and prudent measures are necessary. However, arts and cultures have value, and impact our health and well-being, education, economy, and society. I appreciate the opportunity to testify and urge committee approval and favorable legislative action on Bill Number 249-35, subject to the suggested amendments. Jesus Maasi.
Thank you. Judy? Ma'am?
Buenas, honorable senators. First of all, I appreciate the detailed statement, introductory statement by Senator Marsh-Titano. It gives us a very good background as to why we are here now and testifying for this bill. I am reading on behalf of our chairman of the board of CAHA, Francis Guerrero, who could not make it today. Our board members, as stated here, got together and provided our input, and he very kindly organized this letter for submission. So it contains valuable input and information as to how this bill, which is in general we support. We think it is very necessary, but we are proposing various changes, and it reflects what our chair, what our director, Jackie Balbus, has stated, and our head of delegation, Anne Marie. So reading the bill, again, we greet the honorable senators, and he is stating that he's writing on behalf of the board of directors. We are in agreement with the legislature's findings regarding CAHA being designated as the lead agency for planning and administering for Guam's participation and representation in the Festival of Pacific Arts. We support the intent of Section 2 of the bill. We agree with the legislature's findings regarding art in public buildings and support the intent of Section 3 of the bill. We agree with the legislature's findings that every 4 years it has been a challenge to find funding in support of sending Guam's delegation to one of the largest, if not the largest, events of the Pacific regions in Melanesia, Polynesia, and Micronesia. That event being the Festival of Pacific Arts, or FESPAC. However, we find challenges with the verbiage in Section 4 of the bill and relate the following. Number one, the percent for the arts funding is not a consistent and annual source of funds received, and they only come from those public building constructions / renovation projects that apply and are approved for a qualifying certificate with GIDA. There are years where none of these projects exist, and as well, for those existing under the program, they have the option to use their 1% towards purchase of art in these buildings, and CAHA does not directly receive the total 1%. To assume that successive FESPAC delegations can always be funded by the percent for the arts is not realistic. Number two, there has been talk over the years about setting aside money each fiscal year in anticipation of funding of a delegation's participation in FESPAC. That happens every 4 years. However, we have not seen this being a practice in the passage of each fiscal year's government budget. And this was my input. In 2012, when I was with the Guam Visitors Bureau, my colleague, Teresa Ariola, proposed that the Guam Visitors Bureau set aside $100,000 each year leading up to FESPAC 2016. And that particular board of GVP complied. So we had $200,000 set aside for FESPAC 2016. And then it was not followed through because of change of administration and so forth. So this policy ceased. So the precedent was set at that time. It was successful, but it needs a law to make sure that something like this continues. The Tourist Attraction Fund under GVB receives funding more consistently each year and could be the better source for funding FESPAC delegations if the practice of setting aside $100,000 from it each year is put into law. We acknowledge that there is currently funding in the Percent for the Arts account that we can support travel for the Guam delegation to FESPAC 2020 to be held in Hawaii in June of next year. That does not guarantee that there will be funds available in 2024, 2028, and beyond for this purpose. Section 4 needs to specifically indicate travel for FESPAC 2020. Number 4, CAHA's board has completed and submitted a draft of the rules and regulations for the administration of the Percent for the Arts program to Oversight Chairperson Senator Kelly Marsh. This is currently under review to move forward with the AAA process for adoption. In that submission, the board also recognized that the current law does not allow for CAHA to use the funds for other projects supporting the arts, such as educational and apprenticeship programs, exhibits, and local festivals, and even banking some of the money to eventually fund the construction and forward maintenance of a true cultural civic center where an actual exhibit gallery and a performing arts stage and other pertinent spaces can be created. We attached that draft in this testimony in hopes that the recommendations for amendments to the Arts in Public Buildings Law might also be addressed in Bill 249-35. Thank you for the opportunity to express our viewpoints and look forward to our continued partnership to further the arts and culture of our island. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Senator Hope.
Sidus Masi. Hafaday, honorable senators, Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, Senator Jose Pido Terlahi, Clinton Rigel, and you, Senator Josan Agustin, with your colleagues, Senator Taitagui, Senator Terlahi, and Senator Moylan. Manana Sidus. Sidus Masi for this opportunity to present favorable testimony on Bill 249 to support you, all of you, in your good works as our political leaders, our island's political leaders, because many in our community thrive on the negative. They will find all kinds of negative things that you do, but I applaud you and your hard work in this legislature. My name is Hope Alvarez Cristobal. I am a senior citizen, a grandmother, a community activist and volunteer. I am a farmer and a former public official. I am currently the chairperson for the Comisión Fino Chamorro, dyan ifinanagwa ni Historia, dyan ilinala itaw-taw-tano. I am a student of history. I love and enjoy the arts and understand its civilizing role in our community. I love good books. I love beauty, beauty of nature, beauty in people, in works of people. I love the sounds of good music, of happy children, of the gleeful looks in their faces, knowing that their delights are not mere social veneers or frills, but rather they are expressions of imagination, sense of pride of who they are, sense of inspirational place, and love for community. I love order and appreciate the hard work of building community, and yes, nation building. And while it is true that there have been an increase in crime in recent years, most of which can be attributed to Guam's beneath our feet political status, community creativity and shared spaces have flourished, especially post-FESPAC. But are these worth of our tight money situation, Are these worthy projects to invest in our small island community? I say that if you take an assessment of the growth of community-wide processes involving cultural and creative activities, you will find that the results are promising, maybe even astonishing. Multiple partnerships at multiple levels of participation have emerged, weaving a stronger fabric of our community. We have seen the expansion of good design, great art in public places, good public participation on public issues and public conversations, interest and publication of children's and other books, the growth of the art of traditional medicinal practice, various gumabayla, the growth of local film industry, and a diversity of community, ceremonial, ritual, and social activities. The preservation of Chamorro art forms, a sense of empowerment, respeto, and responsabilidad that are instilled in our people are uplifting. These and many other creative community projects and programs, my dear senators, are worth betting our government dollars on. Good and wise leadership and institutional support for the Guam FESPAC projects of past were crucial in the development of perhaps not so tangible returns on investment, but surely the gains of our island community are evident and can be traced back to this type of leadership and support by the legislature. In our colonial situation, we must be careful to, quote, feed the soul, unquote, as Senator Kelly Mars Taitano indicated in her latest article in the paper the other day. We must do all that we can to assure the kind of human connection and interaction so necessary on a regular basis, because there is no doubt that we struggle to build community as we struggle in nation building. Thank you, and Sidus Maasi, please vote in favor of supporting the FESPAC in a consistent fashion by voting yes on providing a set-aside funding for FESPAC. Sidus Maasi.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Ken, sir.
My name is Ken Leon Guerrero. I'm here today as a frustrated artist, taxpayer, and citizen of Guam. This bill does next to nothing to promote art and art development here on Guam. This bill is a junket, and in a time when government resources are so scarce, we have to prioritize how we use our limited dollars to develop the goals. Now, if the goal of the program is to develop local art, what develops local art more? Sending a delegation of people to Hawaii where next to nobody on Guam will be able to see the art? Very few people on Guam will be able to buy the art? Or developing a forum on Guam, a place on Guam where local artists can display their art so it can be seen. The past 2 years, I've been to 3 exhibits over at Kaha. I was invited by the artist because there is next to nothing done to promote local art locally. In Honolulu, when I first moved there, there was a development where the city undertook a program to promote local art and local artists. And what they did is they opened up the Waikiki Shell on Sundays at Kapiolani Park, and it provided a venue where local artists could go and display their work in a very positive environment and in an environment that maximized the number of people, not just tourists, but also residents. It became a regular thing among people who liked art to go down to Kapiolani Park on Sunday. They had coffee vendors and bakery vendors, and the city opened up the restrooms at the Shell, and artists would line up their booths along the wall there, and hundreds of local artists in the state of Hawaii got their start at the Shell. Artists from the neighbor islands would fly over on Sunday, bringing their latest creations so that they could display them to the public. Spending $400,000 to develop something like that here on Guam would do more to create and support local art and local artists, and to expose local artists and local art to more people on Guam, which will help strengthen the cultural identity that everybody is so concerned that we have to send 100 people to FESPAC to strengthen local identity. Having local artists display local work in affordable venues where more local people can come and see the art would do much more to promote, strengthen, and encourage local art than this little trip to FESPAC will. Now, I say that because I know a lot of artists who struggle to get their works out there. And the traditional means here that I've seen them is they donate them to charities to be auctioned off or raffled off because they don't have any place where they can display. A few people have been able to display at Kaha, but that's a very small number from what I can tell based on the shows I've been invited to. The other venue is car dealerships. Every now and then a car dealership will hold, but it's a limited group. You know, the autistic children will get into Cars Plus, or artwork from a women's or survivors organization will get into Nissan. You know, so where does the struggling artist go to display their work? Because it isn't in the government buildings, because with the exception, the only government building I can think of that's displaying local art right now is the Utility Palace out in Manilo. And every time I go there and I'm walking down the hallways, I am impressed with the art that I see there. I don't see any here. I don't see any at Adelup. Well, the one. Yeah, one? Okay, well, it's not out in the public. Go up to Revenue and Tax. Thousands of people are at Revenue and Tax every day. You've got all these walls along the halls that people are marching up and down, and how much art do we see there? We see OEO posters, we see fire safety posters, we see all kinds of official government notices, but we don't see anything in the way of artwork. Spending $400,000 to develop the local art community, to provide support for local artists, would go a much further and would be a better use, because these are taxpayer dollars. These are dollars that we as taxpayers are not receiving because we gave away the tax as a benefit to some business. But their contribution needs to be looked at as a public asset and must be used to benefit the many, not the few. And using this money in its original intent to stimulate and encourage the development of local art is best done locally. And like I said, if $400,000 was used to create a forum like the City and Council of Honolulu did to create a place where artists could go on a weekly basis to display their work, we'd see more art created by local artists. We'd see more people enjoying the art. And that would do more for strengthening our identity, for encouraging artists and developing artists, than sending 100 people to Honolulu will. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. We will begin questioning from the panel. I'll start with Senator Rigel. You have any questions you want to pose on the panel? None. Senator Cello. Okay. Please do so. Go ahead and do one
I'll
round.
go ahead, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I don't want to disrupt your pattern. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's here today, and let it be known that I'm in full support of FESPAC, no doubt about it. You know, in the past, but it's the funding that I have a concern of, and it's taking the funding from something that I think, you know, Ken, you made a lot of things that made sense, and one of the things I wanted to know, because while I was reading this, was what is the money designated for? You know, that was one of my biggest concerns, and I did send a letter to Jackie asking for some information on how much money, but, you know, so the panel knows as well. Jackie, I'm going to go ahead and ask you about this program that CAHA has for the arts to support artists on Guam. That's what the original intent of, you know, the original bill that created this program. So my question is, how much money has CAHA collected annually through the arts in public building law since implementation of the program?
As I mentioned in my response to your questions, Senator Tadegui, we don't receive monies on an annual or consistent basis through the Percent for the Arts. Most of the time, they purchase local artwork to be displayed in the facilities, right? But for those projects that have like qualifying certificates, for instance, GRMC, that's a larger amount of money. With GRMC, they were required to allocate 1.5 million for the Percent for the Arts. They used 200,000 of that monies to purchase local artwork for the hospital, and then they also agreed to pay CAHA in 8 installments of 100,000 on a quarterly basis. So we received the last payment earlier this year. That's the 400,000 that everybody is aware of. There is a remaining amount of 500,000 that they need to give to CAHA, but it's going to be used specifically for programming. But based on the way the current law is written, it only says you can purchase artwork or it goes into CAHA, right? So we're trying to amend the rules and regs so that we have a little bit of flexibility as to how we can support the programs. For instance, the hospital, I believe, wanted to focus on healing arts. All our rules and regs have to be amended to incorporate all the other art disciplines.
So how much is in the account right now?
Currently, we have 700,000 in the account.
Okay, with an anticipation of 500 more coming.
Yes.
Okay. So in the past, how much has CAHA given to Festival of the Pacific Arts? And I know that in the past you have given some money, but it's because it was on Guam, right? That was in 2000.
In 2016, there was a law that was enabled that required that any monies that came in through the Percent for the Arts program at that particular time.
Can you speak in the mic? We can.
Oh, I'm sorry. During that time, there was a specific law that was enabled that allowed monies that came into through the Percent for the Arts program to be used for FESPAC. So out of that monies from the GRMC, they gave 100,000 to FESPAC.
Okay, so it was 100,000
Yes.
to FESPAC
Yes.
through legislation. Okay.
Yes.
So
But that
what-
was
Yeah, okay. And then what are CAHA's future plans, especially, you know, well, let me backtrack. The rules and regs.
yes.
When I was reading the law, the current law, there were rules and regs in two different areas of the law. And I just heard in your testimony now that you're doing the rules and regs, that you're going to submit it to the legislature.
Yes, because we had sent the rules and regs, the proposed rules and regs, to the AG, and they had recommended to us that it would be easier to work with the legislature to have whatever we wanted amended, put in to amend the Percent for the Arts law.
Okay. So those
So
rules
that's the
and regs
process that
are,
we're going through right now.
yeah, and those were, the law was created a while back. Why is the rules and regs taking so long to create?
Well, we initially tried to get it done in the previous legislature, but it didn't happen. So now we're working with the oversight chair to try and get that done.
I see. But the law was created a long time ago, right?
The initial law, yes.
Yeah,
But
the creation of the rules and regs.
But Public Law 3, I believe 33-235, they incorporated all these art disciplines other than visual arts. So, you know, the way the Percent for the Arts works right now, if a developer wants to purchase artwork, they have to go through a selection process through CAHA. So there's an actual review committee that's consist of the architect, the owner of the building, 2 practicing artists, and the mayor of the municipality wherever the project is taking place.
Right.
But it's only for visual arts, so we need to amend these rules and regs to incorporate the performing arts and the other disciplines, so that way, if the airport wanted to have performances when there are arrivals, that would be a possibility. But right now, it's only specifically visual arts.
Okay, so the last thing on this, right when it talks about the rules and regs, there's a section here that says, the director of CAHA shall include in CAHA rules and regulations pursuant to the administrative adjudication law for the disposition of funds to meet the purpose of fostering culture and the arts for the development of local artists, our children, and the community as a whole. So when this law was created, it was about supporting our local artists here on Guam and pursuing that. It's not just about supporting it too, it's about also encouraging and fostering our children to also look into the arts. And that's my concern about, using any funding out of this, but and as you said, that the funding from this area is not always going to be consistent. That maybe, going back to GVB might be the place to go for something like that, because it's more consistent. Secondly, Anne-Marie, you mentioned GVB, and even in the testimony that was brought up, have you approached them at all yet? Anne-Marie, have you approached them at all?
We've had conversations. One of the GVB representatives sits on our board for Department of Chamorro Affairs, and we understand even through Senator San Agustin that the monies for the TAF funding is very, very tight. And so we've been just in, we're sitting on the other side of things. And so in our ask, only you as legislators and GVB can decide really what funding there is available or how much they can afford to give us at this point, just to see 2020 through until we resolve a consistency of funding for future FESPACs.
Well, have you sent a letter of request yet?
No, ma'am.
Okay, that needs to be done. I mean, you need to send a letter to GVB and ask them for some money. Because I used to be in GVB, I was a deputy director there. And unless there's a formal official letter request, nothing's going to happen. So you really need to send a letter to GVB asking for some funding, on this. I wasn't able to make your planning committee meeting, but I did have a staff there. And there is this budget that was provided during the meeting. Is that true to form that you're looking at? This is the one that's asking for 337,627?
Yes. Senadora, that's a working budget as labeled. It's a working budget, and so we continue as we begin to resource sponsors and come up with fundraising ideas. Then the budget continues to be adjusted, and so I'd like to provide the latest budget as it's a working budget.
Do you have it?
Yes. Can I ask Sherry to please provide the budget?
I appreciate that. If we can all have a copy of that budget, that'd be very helpful. Thank you for bringing that.
And so
I really
it's
appreciate it.
become lower now as we work with the committee in developing, other ideas and working with people on getting sponsorship or doing fundraising ideas, working on planning.
Okay. Does CAHA have a current plan? I mean, I know the board just got together, and this is for Judy Flores. Hi, Auntie Judy. You've been on the CAHA board, and you're currently a member of CAHA board right now. True?
Yes, Senator. I've been on
For a
CAHA
long
board 3 times,
Quite some time.
over many years.
Yeah,
And I also worked at CAHA as the first folk arts coordinator. I coordinated the first major festival participation of Guam's participation in FESPAC
Definitely
back
a
in
wealth of knowledge.
1988. So I've seen this, and with regard, and then I also served on the GVB board at the time when we were planning for FESPAC 2016. So I'm very aware of the the problems that have happened, and ways that I really, whether I'm in Kaha or observing from the side, I see how hard they work to build capacity of local artists. And that's what this bill will do, is aside from this one time in 2020 that we need to tap the funds from the percent for the arts, the whole idea of changing this law, amending it so that we can encompass all of the arts and allow Kaha to do some very creative programming, it opens up a lot of opportunities for doing exactly what Mr. Ken Guerrero was talking about. You know, just building the capacity of our artists, inspiring them, and providing that kind of money for them.
So, Judy, knowing that the budget is only what's in the account right now of $700,000, and then taking the money for FestPac out of this funding, and knowingly, as a board member, knowingly that it's not always consistent funding source into this account, and that we may not see any money for years, and being ordered to create this kind of, you know, promotion of artists on Guam and displays. I mean, I've been to the Honolulu Bowl. I've been to that festival. I lived in Hawaii for 3 years. I've seen it. It's amazing. Knowing that, taking any money from that fund, and knowing that it may not be replenished for quite a while, are you a bit concerned as a board member?
You know, my concern is that the artists are so inspired by FestPac. And I did a whole doctoral thesis on the impact of FestPac on building the inspiration, the identity, the renaissance of the arts on Guam because of what they saw at FestPac. They brought it home. And what you see here now, the body ornamentation, the carving, all of this was inspired by what they saw from other Pacific artists all over the Pacific. So it outweighs, I think, in this particular situation, it outweighs the need for, we need to get our artists to FestPac. We really do.
And that being said, to Anne Marie, the head of delegation, it's inspiring, she says. That being said, well, when you're deciding who's going to be attending, because you have 167 applicants,
Yes.
and only 100 can go, and then you're subtracting from that just so that administration can go to, you're not. So it's strictly 100 artists, and then.
That's correct.
Okay, but you're looking for funding to also fund the administrative part, the other 5 individuals, according to your budget here. It says here that you have 105 packs. You're only allowed 100. But that means there's 5 additional, and for lodging for 4 Kaha individuals is $16,952. So I don't see that number changing, you know, because, you know, Hawaii is quite expensive. 326 is about right, you know.
Yes.
So when choosing the artists that are going to attend in Hawaii's 2020 FestPac, are you going to choose artists who've never gone before?
Well, there needs to be a balance. So in order to bring experience that have already led in FestPac or know how FestPac goes, there's going to be a balance. So in each program, as program chairs, there's 4 program chairs in each area. They've all been to a FestPac, and that's important to lead in leadership, to bring experience in leading the group. And so there's going to be a balance of new artists and former artists that have attended, who, depending on where their art form is, and so we can bring the best. We can't bring just all new delegates. We need to bring the best, especially because I believe that it's very normal to expect something more from Guam, since we were the previous host country. And so in order to bring the best, there's a balance of new and old, and we are basing it on the selection on community service, experience, and whether they're apprenticing, whether some of these leaders that we are gonna take in each area have apprenticed and have given back to the community in this sense.
Okay. I hope there's a majority, though, of the new ones to have this experience. It'd be very helpful,
I believe there will be, Senadora, the way it's looking right now, I believe there will be a majority.
Okay, well, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Terlai, Therese?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your testimony this morning. I'm glad that we're hearing this bill. First of all, I fully support CAHA as the lead agency for this endeavor, and I've seen their work in past FESPACs, and so I know that they will do their best. They will represent Guam very well. They will keep the delegates organized, and that's very important when they're out there, is adjusting to whatever comes up. And so I don't think the issue before us is whether or not we support the arts. I think our law is very clear. Guam is very supportive of the arts. I mean, we are trying our best. We've put money aside for CAHA. We've put money aside for Department of Chamorro Affairs. We've put our tourist attraction funds into a new museum that's supposed to also be a learning place, a showcase place. We've put money at the Chamorro Village for local artists. Supposedly, that's what they're supposed to do there, is promote local artists. And I know that and then we have this percentage of the arts law and many other aspects, in fact, that I'm just not coming to the top of my head right now, but I know there are, and I know that CAHA, because I've seen their work, and they go out on weekends and they have promoted art. I mean, Mr. Leongero, that's the only part I differ with you, is that they have done a lot of good things, and I agree they can do better. Of course, I think they know that. I think they were looking forward to this $400,000 to do better, right? To promote the arts, because it's very difficult. And I know that they had their own exhibit space that they would exhibit in. They do weekend. I think we just finished Arts Month, or Arts and Humanities Month, and they were working on the weekends to do fairs at the shopping centers and trying to get out to places where people would be. They do village festivals, and they try to keep the artists registered, organized, and so that they can get notice to them about any type of opportunities that might be available. These village festivals I always enjoy seeing the artwork, or even the new artists that might want to appear at the village festivals. And of course at the Chamorro Village, but I'm sure there are more. And we even have vendors sometimes at parks, but I agree. I mean, so what now? I don't think anybody should get the idea that any senator here is against promoting the arts, supporting the arts. I don't think anybody's going back on support for the arts. I think all we're looking at, and that we should really focus on, is accountability, and is it the best use of that money? So yes, we are talking about money, but I think that that's reasonable for us as senators to do. And I don't think we should shy away from that. I think we, Chamorro women, we should set an example that we are going to be accountable. And we are going to, yes, we support arts, and we are going to be accountable for what money we use from the government to do that. So there's a balance of the funds in this special account that you said it's an irregular account. It's not a regular source of income for CAHA. The funds are now $712,000. And that includes the $400 from GRMC recently. Did you have a planned use of that money? Is there a plan in place? Were you going to give out grants, or what were you going to do with that money?
Yes, part of the plan was that we wanted to give more monies out in grants, because the monies that we get from the National Endowment for the Arts it's not a lot of money, and we want to support. There are a lot of good projects out there, a lot of good artisans, but realistically, it's challenging because we give out roughly 150 to 160,000 per year, and our requests alone from the artists average about $500,000. So it is a competitive grant, and we were hoping that we could use some of the percent for the arts money towards giving out more grants, and
But the law allows you to do that with that money, right?
yes.
So did you plan to do that, or what were you waiting for, I guess,
We
to
were
use the
really just
money?
waiting for the amendment for the rules and regs, because like I said,
Okay.
it specifically really only targets visual arts.
Okay.
And we really want to encompass all the other art forms too as well.
All right, I don't want to thank the work of the board and CAHA that the draft rules were submitted with their letter from the board, and I think there are some excellent suggested changes in those draft rules, if I may say. Some of them I still have questions on, but I'm sure that will come up later when we discuss those rules, but really thoughtful ideas on how to change the program. But I just want to make it clear, this program is in place, you are able to use this money, but you want to change the rules so that it's you can reach broader.
Yes.
I see. Okay, so that's the delay in use of the money. And the 400,000 that came in from GRMC, was that on schedule or was that delayed?
Actually, that payment was delayed. I believe we signed the MOA in 2014, and they were supposed to give installment payments on a quarterly basis. So there was a gap with us receiving that 400,000.
So they had not given anything prior to that?
We had 400,000 every quarter, but then for some reason it stopped, so I'm not really sure why.
Okay. So somewhere along the line,
Yes, somewhere along
since
the line.
2014. All right.
Yes.
And you're still expecting more. And I see, I was looking for, the law requires you to report each quarter how these monies are spent. That's where I found the balance. But are other companies then in full compliance with what they were required to do under this law?
Well, majority of are government agencies. So as I mentioned before, they purchase artwork for their facilities. The only times we really get in a lot of money is really through that qualifying certificate program.
So are there any outstanding that you're expecting?
Well, we haven't entered into any agreement yet with TNN.
What's TNN?
Tsubaki Towers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're working on that. Right now, they have the qualifying certificate, but the terms and conditions have to be set forth and put in place. It's probably going to be like the GRMC, where they're going to pay the monies that is, that they owe within a certain time frame.
Is this being negotiated directly with you and Tsubaki Towers, or who's
Well,
negotiating
it's just
that?
still in the early stages. We're just talking right now. They are supposed to send us a draft of that agreement, and then, of course, it's going to be brought to our board for review.
Well, they've announced that they are opening in April, and the law
Yes.
requires that they should not have an occupancy permit until
Yeah.
they have complied with the law.
They are aware of it, that the occupancy permit won't be signed by CAHA
All right.
until there's something in place.
Okay. All right, I wasn't sure, there were references to discrimination against Chamorro art that is taking place, but I'm not sure what that meant. Is any of you familiar with discrimination against Chamorro artists? All right. So are we planning for this, so the budget that we've been presented this morning is $310,000. This is the amount that we're proposing to take out of the percentage of the arts, because I agree with CAHA. It's the bill's unlimited amount can be taken out right now, and so what are we planning? I'd like that to be very clear on the record. Are we planning to take the 310 out of the percentage of the arts, and is this for fiscal year 2020 or for all future, for unlimited?
We're just trying to get through 2020, Senadora. I believe that in working with Jackie and the CAHA board, that the board agrees and supports funding the 2020 Festival of the Arts for what we need. However, in efforts in trying to fundraise and look for in-kind sponsors, this will continue to be a working budget, and we'll continue to, at this moment, right now, this is what we're looking at.
Oh, you're
And
saying
as
it
we
might,
gain-
sorry.
as we gain, fundraising, more fundraising, planning, and sponsorships, this number will continue to decrease. However, because of the late planning, this is the situation we're in. And,
All right, so we're hoping it might decrease with your efforts. All right. Okay. The only question I have on the budget is this, I'm not familiar with these things in detail, but there's a technical production. The largest amount here besides air travel is technical production, $36,000. And it says it's for one vignette up to 3 minutes, live stream video of showcase performances in Hawaii, and one commercial. And
we're looking for that to decrease also.
All right.
That was just when we were sending out for quotations on the things that we need. This is the lowest quote that came in, so we threw that in there. But we're looking at other sponsors or ways to decrease that amount also.
All right, this is, I think the law passed for this film industry to be centered at PBS. Is PBS able to do this for us?
We're working with them currently to see what they could do for us, and that's where the decrease will be.
I hope so. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, and then the only question, one additional question that I have is, so when we say CAHA is going to be the lead agency, yet I know the Department of Chamorro Affairs is still the head of the delegation, and that I know in the previous hearing you've talked about an executive committee or something that's planning this.
Yes.
Does this contradict or is it consistent with CAHA being the lead agency? How does that work?
Well, that's what I was saying in my testimony earlier, that as head of delegation, and we reorganized, and so CAHA being separated, I've been named head of delegation, and I will see it through for consistency, because at this point, we've been working together very well and going through with this, but later, once CAHA leads, then there will be no reason for Department of Chamorro Affairs to be head of delegation. It's just been that way in the past, and before the reorganization, it names the president of Department of Chamorro Affairs automatically as head of delegation. But in the middle of the game right now, we can't change right now. I just gotta see it through and be with them, work with them for 2020, and then once they're named head, then they will now take over, and then there wouldn't be all this, confusion. But right now, we're working very, very well, harmoniously in seeing 2020 FestPac through.
I appreciate that. I know that CAHA used to be like by executive order under the organization, under Department of Chamorro Affairs for a limited time. Before that, they were by themselves, and then they got under, and now they're apart again.
Yes.
All right. So CAHA, according to this law, they're supposed to make their decisions for these funds based on decisions by their board, their governing board. And could you state for the record who is on your governing board right now, and do you expect any expirations prior to April 2020?
Currently, we have a 9-member board. There are 4 seats that are vacant right now. We do anticipate a few of the terms expiring December of this year. There might be a couple that would be expiring. So currently, our board is chaired by Francis Guerrero. Our vice chair is Joseph Certeza. And then the membership is comprised of Dr. Judy Flores, Max Ronquillo, Vince Regis, Masters Frank Rabon, and Masters Frank Lazama, and the vice mayor from Agate. The vice mayor from Agate, Chris Verheeren.
Okay. Is that a representative from the mayor's council?
Oh, and we also have one more new board member, Patty Christ, Mrs. Christ, the wife of the UOG president.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Donna Kloppenberg.
All right. And so do you think if CAHA has designated the lead for FestPac that the board making these types of decisions is, they're able to do this, they're meeting regularly and all that?
Yes, our board is very consistent. They do meet every month, and we have an active, engaged board. So yes, they would really look into FestPac or any other issue that's brought before them.
All right. And so then I did see that it says for 2016, there was at least a provision put into the arts and the building law, what's it called? Arts and Public Buildings Law, that said FESPAC shall be exempted from the number of grants the organization may receive per year and the maximum amount of the grants the organization may receive. This exemption sunsets on June 30, 2016. Is that where you said they got the 100,000?
Yes.
It was like in a grant form under the program, under the Arts and Public Buildings program.
We gave out from our NEA fundings grants that were specifically for FESPAC to our artists. That 100,000 was a separate amount.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So under this program, you also give grants to the artists so they can develop their work?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that is one of the intents.
Is there a way that CAHA or Department of Chamorro Affairs or all of you together can help to allay this concern that FESPAC, I mean, because I've seen it and I agree that what it does for the artists who are present is huge, right? Irreplaceable. But that we can, I guess, reap the benefits of that for a bigger part of our community, as you know, Mr. Lunger was stating. And I saw in the last FESPAC that we tried to do showcases, which I thought were a good idea, right? You showcased what you were going to present down in the Solomon Islands, for example. You showcased that so we could see, we could have the benefit for those who could not make it there, things like that. And so I guess, I'm sure you're planning this because I see your fundraisers that are planned and they include showcases, but I guess on a continual basis, right?
Respond to that.
Please.
Senadora, as Ken was talking, I wanted to jump in and say we're on the right track because we're planning, but in coordination with CAHA, you know, and our relationship is very, very good, knowing that we were together at one point and separated, but in continuing for the transition, that this idea of even opening up the huts again, that you know, on a regular basis for the artists to be able to come over and work with them, and CAHA will organize it. Chamorro Village and Department of Chamorro Affairs will provide the space at minimal or no cost in order for us to continue to give a space for the artists. So these are already in the plans. We're just, like I said, a lot of our time is going into the FESPAC now
Yes.
because it's really near and we have to really already get on board with that. And once we secure that, then we can move on to other program plans as far as for the artists. But we have space even at the museum where, you know, we plan on a monthly basis to be able to work with CAHA and provide that space for them without their gallery at this point. Even right now, we're still supporting CAHA in that they're still looking for a place. And so DCA and CAHA have been working in tandem all this time, helping each other, and we will not let them go until we know they're secure, because we know the value of the artists in the community as far as the revitalization plans, and you know, even with Department of Chamorro Affairs going forward and in our heritage plans. And so that these are things that we are working on already.
Senator?
Thank you. I'd just like to contribute that I Commissioni fino Chamorro e Finanaguin Historia and Ilinala Tautautono is seriously considering a signature event. So this might be something that we will be collaborating on. So, Situsmasi.
Thank you. I want to, maybe I also disagree with my colleague here about new versus experienced artists going to CAHA. I am very proud of our artists, especially our masters, and I'm so proud when they represent us. And of course, I appreciate that CAHA is the one doing an apprenticeship program that masters teach, right? And they pass these traditions on. That's the most important part of what we're doing. So I just hope that there's a way, that we can pass whatever we're spending money on, pass that on. Keep passing it on, keep passing it on. That's really going to be our strength. So I encourage you to find all your ways to do that. And I know that CAHA is trying to be very creative in the past, but yeah, we need to really step that up. Situs Masi to all of you.
Thank you. Senator Piru, you have any questions?
Ben I am Judang Cluna si Jus Marcy, and live in Inglaterra. I'm in the English. Thank you very much for stepping up and taking the challenge. Lo tungwa na guahag wini komentus por the gogov sopotisti sapotisti bill 249. The stay sangan na base sapotisti monisinya. Lo tungwa na guahag gi corazon mizo mampinatsa ne dia masangan gi unu ni testimonio. Sabanti te sapotisti bill 249. Lo ikinimprendeko debit data protehi jata sige at sumuning mona jata promota todo esti siya itaw-tauta ni sina hafa machogi para ta hasuse manamko ni empatihit ni hiningeta ja donklo na si Jesus Masi si Mrs. Flores dan todo samjo si former senator dan hamjo gani si Greg Pangilinan dan si corn beef kumpaleko zabani dosujo sa subrinao gumelo esti kaha za gagi gi hinasoko na tori tempo janggen guaha umujung gi finomizo sa guaha gwini no gi bill 249 lufno English. We need to do some amendments to bill 249 za tunga si Kelly na nota jo papa jo pintusa leko kon tungo afale legne jo i amendment ni pamachogi leina hungan por sempre en li na jangien humujung esti de pursi the true bill of 249. You will see those amendments based on your testimony today. And once again, thank you very much for giving us a chance to listen to your testimony and just continue the good job that you guys are doing.
Thank you, Senator Lai. Senator Moylan, do you have any questions you wanted to pose to the...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little short. Thank you. Acting Director, thank you for your statement. It's interesting to know that the Festivals of the Arts has been going on since 1972, and we still haven't provided, especially now, Kaha, the exact funding that you need. So it's important that if we want this to survive, we need to identify that. Understand this is an emergency, basically like an emergency situation that we want to achieve so we can continue on, because we've been participating in FestPac since 47 years. Somehow we managed to survive, but that you've articulated how important it is to continue to make it on a permanent basis, as the author of the bill is attempting to do. So that's a good thing. Also, my experience with Kaha is just as excited as I was to try to get my office space when first elected. I was also more excited to go to Kaha because I took as many paintings as I could. And I think I took too many, but I'm not going to mention that. But it's beautiful artwork, and it should be displayed even further. And if we can identify money, or if we need to, whichever way, as quickly as possible. I agree with you that we need a permanent home for the council if we're going to want to make this thing, this work for a long term. And I thank you for this. There should be a threshold of the amount of percentage of art monies that can be utilized for FestPac 2020, because you have long-term ideas. So that's important. So thank you for that. Ms. Flores, I appreciate all that. Thank you for speaking on behalf of the board, and I appreciate especially the amendments. I asked for a soft copy, and I was able to get that as well. So this will be very helpful before this bill comes to session floor. Maybe we can do some amendments in committee as well. But this is important, so thank you for the time. I also want to say, with my little space that I have at home, I have 6 of your paintings on my wall, and you were able to sign it, so I appreciate that. It's very nice. The budget is very helpful for us to go through and digest. This is what we were hoping to receive last time. So thank you. It explains a lot for us.
actually have always had a working budget. We
Okay.
just we've been
Keep
working on it,
working
and
on
I
it.
apologize that we came in, unprepared the last time, but we're making up for it today, so here we
Okay.
are. We're working, we've been working, and we'll continue to work until the last day that we have to get on that plane and leave to represent and bring the best of Guam, but most importantly, to impact, to bring back the impact to our people from that experience.
Thank you. There's one statement, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to read one briefly here from our Steve Guerrero, the Director of Office Finance and Budget. In his last paragraph on the note, he said, since this project is not included in the fiscal year 2020 budget, the cost of the program will have a financial impact to the fiscal year 2020 budget. However, without additional data, the financial impact is undetermined at this time. So I agree with my colleague as well. We all want to see FESPAC succeed. We all want to see CAHA succeed, but we also have to keep in mind that our duty is to make sure we budget properly. So I'll take this back, and I appreciate all the testimony made, and I'll do my best in support for you folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Moreland. Senator Titlegy, you have one follow-up question?
Just to follow up, as you said, this is a working budget. And I noticed that 36,000, I think, of it, or 60-some thousand of fundraising opportunities, right? If I'm not mistaken. 500,000 of fundraising opportunities, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
nothing in here indicates.
For now.
For now. But nothing indicates in here like, United Airlines sponsorship or maybe, some other major companies, insurance companies may be coming into play here. Nothing like that has been indicated. And when you're saying working budget, actually is a true budget 336,000.
Right now, it's at 310, Senadora.
Okay, but what is this one up here that says total? It says in-kind sweat equity, 96 delegates, 400 hours times $8.75. What is that?
So this is the work of all the delegates that are going to, prepare to go to FESPAC. That has a value also, because
Oh, you're
they're
just
all
putting-
asking, so what is their part in their fundraising? Because we're holding them responsible to do some of the fundraising
Oh, I see.
also. And so we needed to put a dollar amount or a sweat equity amount into that also, because they're not getting paid to prepare to go to represent us in those hours that they're practicing or, getting ready, getting their apprentices ready to bring them. So that's what that amount is, Senator.
In the past, Jackie, I remember that it was 150,000 that was allotted to FESPAC in past FESPACs, right? However, I know that 100,000 came out of it this year. Considering that since 19 forgotten or what, we've been giving out 150, and considering inflation, costs, the cost of goods going up, things like that, would it be safe to say that from 150 to 200,000 would probably be a good jump up? And if we were to support 200,000, would that be enough?
Can I respond?
Well, would 200,000 be enough?
Okay. So when we came up with this budget, Senadora, so you asked earlier about insurance and all these other things. We are working on that. We just had to leave this on the budget because we haven't confirmed any of that right now. So to be safe, because of the time constraint, we're including it. However, we are working on it. And the amount in the jump, you'll know that, for example, seafaring. We've never really been represented in seafaring in previous FESPACs, but the last FESPAC has really elevated the interest and the growth of our artists, increasing, what their needs will be. And so in some of these, in our costs, for example, the shipping, we're looking into working with Matson, but we can't give them any definites because we're still working with the seafarers right now to see what their needs are. And until they give us what their needs are to go and represent and to, in order to be inclusive of different entities, because there's maybe 4 of them that we're trying to work with, and choosing the amount is very, very difficult of who's going to go and represent and how many canoes we're going to bring. That's going to determine how many containers we need. And so right now, these numbers are playing it safe at the last, with a time constraint. We're just playing it safe in the event that we can't, but we're working very diligently to try to get the numbers down in the sponsorship.
So if I take 310,127 minus 61,500, you're looking at 248,000, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what you're looking at really is funding for 248,627. Because I'm subtracting what the fundraising efforts that are going to generate 61,500 and then 310,127.
Senator, again, these are just, estimate costs from previous experiences of what we could bring in, but we can't guarantee. This is just an estimate. We can't guarantee. It's just a plan to say that, we're going to make $15,000 in our showcasing, but if we don't meet that amount at this short time in the game, we're going to try. That's our target, is to fundraise for that. However, there's no guarantee that that's the amount that we will make, and so this budget is really already, we're playing it safe, and as we work, maybe even as soon as the next month, perhaps as we get the sponsorships on board and the in-kind gifts, then we could update this and we'll provide this to you all as we go, as we continue.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Yes, Senator, if I could just clarify, in 2008, we received $250,000 in appropriation, and then for 2012, it was $400,000.
But that was preparing, I know the budget on that because you prepared for the one we were hosting, which cost us millions of dollars. So 250 was nothing compared to how much we paid for hosting FestPac on Guam. So I do understand those figures. But in the past, it's always been 150. And knowing, it's 150,000?
I was just referring to Sherry, and she said 2008 was 250, and I think even prior to that, it was around that same amount.
In 2008?
Yes, 2008.
Okay. And none of that went for the pre-planning of the hosting on 2016? No? Okay.
No.
So that being said, the last one is have you asked any of the delegates to come up with any kind of funding at all to attend? Because in the past, if I'm not mistaken, each delegate had to raise a certain amount, and I'm getting a nod yes in the back there from the ladies who's been doing this for a long time, that in the past, the delegates always have had to come up with some kind of funding. And if I'm not mistaken, they had to fundraise for their own $500. Is that the amount?
For 2008, they were asked to raise $500, but that was because it was in American Samoa and there were limited flights from Hawaii to American Samoa, so we had to stay, I think, in Honolulu for 3 days prior to and 3 days coming back. So that's why we had to ask, for some monies from the delegates.
And it's never been done after that? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12?
2012, it was a charter flight, so.
So again, they had to raise money again, right? Each delegate had to raise money.
They
Yes.
did, to a certain,
Right.
but not a
So
set amount.
I'm noticing in your budget here, I don't see that anywhere here, where the delegates would have to contribute something, that to some of the cost.
For now, again, we've spoken to all, gathering all the artists that are the 167. We've been having meetings with them. And I think the great concern is putting time into preparing to go right now with the time constraint again. But they are included in this fundraising. They're supposed to help in these fundraisings. That would be their part for now. In the selling of the tickets and the raffle tickets, there'll be quotas for them to have each to sell. And then also the T-shirts, and then the showcasing is bringing what they're preparing for to the showcase in their sweat equity to prepare to sell the tickets at the door, and so that'll be their part.
So this part, fundraising, is basically from the artists themselves. So once you decide who those artists are going to be, then these tickets will be given to these artists and they'll have to sell it.
Not all, but they would take part in it, and then the
Okay.
executive committee and the members of, whoever's supporting us and all the artists, that even those that are not delegates, will be tapping on to help and support the effort.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, again for the second opportunity.
Thank you. I would ask the sponsor to ask her questions, and then I will close. I'll ask a few questions, then I'll close.
Sandy Mahasi, Mr. Chair. So I'm glad we had this discussion about the amount that it takes to send delegates there, because hearing over and over 150,000 was very misleading. I think that that was the budget in the 80s, maybe the 70s. And so 250, over 10 years ago, 12 years ago, by the time it's 2020, and no account for inflation and so forth, 250 was one of the more recent costs, and that's where we're getting the budget pretty close to, but I mean, we're considering, this is a 12-year-old figure. Nothing, or virtually nothing, has gone down in price in the last 12 years. So we're working extremely hard to keep those costs down, and so I'm glad that people were able to explain that. At our last meeting, if you remember the amount, do you remember the amount with United's offer, what kind of a discount that is from their normal fare?
Yes, I'd like to respond to that. We've been working with United on a discounted group fare, which is cheaper than a chartered fare at this point, and they'd have to go in 2 trips, and so the amount of the ticket has gone down $1,600, which means United in some form in their discount is sponsoring some of this. Shared, do we remember? I think per person amount in our last quote was, I'm sorry, I can't remember the figure, but I know that it's down now. They've given us a fair discount already in United, and yes, so the average amount is $1,350, and okay, it was $1,350, and we put the budget at $1,600, playing it safe because they need a down payment. They need a down payment by December 27th, and if we don't put the down payment of $200 per person, they won't. This price is going to go up by the time they save the seats for us, because summer, exactly June 9th is the estimated date of departure, and then June 21st is just one day before, one day after to come back. It's going to have to be divided into 2 trips, and if we don't make the down payment by December 27th, this is the price it's going to go up to. So to play it safe, we have to include this in the budget in case we don't have the monies to, move to pay for it, an amount that they're asking for to save the seats.
Sainama Asi for that. And with that, so you're pointing out that this is very, very time sensitive. We're down to just a number of months. Down payments and so forth have to be made. If we can meet that deadline, we will be saving a substantial amount, it sounds like, for the trip. So we have every
That's correct.
incentive to try to help the FESPAC group do that. Could you also explain some of your discussions or what you've heard about Matson volunteering to do some transporting for
Yes.
FESPAC?
They are totally willing to help us with sponsorship. However, we haven't confirmed the final contribution because we're meeting with Seafaring and the artists. Like I said, it's a work in progress meeting with all the delegates so that they let us know their needs of transportation or transporting things over there. So if we're going to bring, is it 2 canoes, is it 3 canoes, and each canoe, has to fit into that one container. And so as we, and Judy Sina is in charge of that area, and so she's meeting with them this week, I believe, or I'm sorry, today's Friday, next week, with the seafarers, and every group by group to assess their needs and what they would need to bring so that we can finally come up with some space allocations to be able to bring to MATS and make that final decision as far as their contribution.
Very good to hear. And with that, so there are contributions that are being lined up. There will still be additional costs of getting the items from the port to the festival and things like that that will still need to be accounted for, but it sounds like you're making good progress there. And could somebody explain, somebody earlier had used the term junket, and there's been implications at other hearings where there's been this statement of handing over $4,000 per delegate. Can you explain to me or outline for us to hear what kind of things each delegate gets? What are they getting with the money that's being invested in the Chamorro heritage and the future for our youth as regards to Chamorro culture and arts?
Senadora, I think over and over we've, expressed the value and that all of this brings, and
so not the value, but what they will receive. Like, will they get an airline ticket? Do they get to stay in a hotel? What kind of conditions are they dealing with that $250,000, $300,000?
I see.
Well, the monies is used to pay, of course, for the airfare, but the host country provides the lodging and accommodation. So typically they stay in dorms. Sometimes they sleep on cots or futons in those dorms. They do not stay in hotels. And the host country does provide their food as well for the duration.
And can you describe what they get, what else they get? I think they get uniforms. Is there
yes,
anything
and of
else
course
substantial they
it
get?
covers their uniforms, which is usually comprised of a couple of T-shirts and then an official uniform based on whatever fabric is selected or whatever the design is for our uniforms, because it changes every FESPAC.
So with that fabric, is it already sewn into a uniform for them, or how does that occur?
No, normally they're just given the fabric and then they have it sewn to whatever best meets their needs or whatever style they want to wear for the festival.
So what you're outlining is numerous ways that they're taking responsibility and making additional sacrifices. I don't think there's anybody else in the government of Guam or in programs for trainings or representing Guam outside of maybe some high school or middle school sports programs, but where they're expected to stay on a cot for 2 weeks or a futon for 2 weeks and just eat what's given to them with a good attitude and gratitude and so forth, and just given some fabric and some T-shirts. So I don't want anybody to think that this is a junket or that anybody of these delegates are
It's not a junket either
staying
for
in
the
a hotel.
artists or the staff. Quite honestly, once you get to FESPAC, we're usually situated in a hut or a booth, and every day there's demonstrations and activities in that areas. And then, of course, the performing arts groups, depending on where the performance locations are at, sometimes they perform 3 or 5 times a day. It just depends on whatever schedule is given to them by the host country. But it's constant activity. And I think I mentioned at the last public hearing that the CAHA staff is the first to rise in the morning and the last ones to sleep, because we have to make sure that our delegates are taken care of and all their needs are met. For instance, in Solomon, we actually had to go to a water factory and buy, I think it was 20 cases per day of water just for our delegates and deliver it to where they were being accommodated at, as well as ice, just to make sure that they're at least a little comfortable.
those are important details to hear. And then here under the sweat equity, you know, I know that we're going to hopefully refine this. Perhaps we'll be able to work with Dr. Flores or others that can give us a real value. So even if we're looking at the minimum wage, which, you know, I cringe at the thought of putting the sweat equity of our masters and our highly developed artisans at $8.75, but just to show that at the bare minimum, the kind of hours that they're putting in, they're easily going to be putting in 400 hours. And if we calculate that at the bare minimum, they are far exceeding just in volunteering, just in demonstrations, just in apprenticing, and sharing, and just everything else. They are putting in a lot. And as the president of DCA mentioned, they're going to be a large part of the fundraising as well. So I think those are important things, and I appreciate that you've brought them forward. You know, there has been some discussion about the money and so forth. So yes, money was set aside for CAHA and DCA, but to the president of DCA, can you outline the number of vacancies that you're dealing with and the number of positions that were funded this budget?
We have nine vacancies right now in Department of Chamorro Affairs. A lot of doubling up on our you know, positions. For example, with Chamorro Village, we're looking to hire a general manager with this budget this year, so we're already you know, doing that. But as we wait for the hiring process, which is a very, you know, you know, it's so many levels of trying to hire and trying to ensure. It's a very good system in ensuring that we take on people that are qualified. However, the time frame in moving that is still, you know, a little long, and so we're down to a staff of 9 after the reorganization. However, it's with good hopes in the future that it's going to build to something greater and stronger as a entity that's going to move the revitalization and our nation building as necessary. And so right now, you know, we're doubling up, including myself. You know, I'm a runner. I bring my own timesheets, and it's okay. It's okay because we're working towards something great, and we just work it, and as we come, we look forward to greater things. However, even in my capacity to serve as head of delegation, I continue to stay true, even, you know, being mission driven, to be able to carry through 2020 FESPAC as we see greater days to come in the reorganization of DCA.
So correct me if I'm wrong, are you saying that there are 3 or 4 presently, 3 or 4 positions that are filled and maybe another that can be filled, but still leaving several vacancies?
I'm sorry, can you clarify?
So right now, the number of staff that are funded and in place at DCA, are they 3 or 4, including yourself?
Yes, well, in the president's office, there's 2 of us. We're looking to hire an administrative officer right now. That'll make 3. And then over at the Chamorro Village right now, there's just 3 people running it. You know, in the general or the program coordinator acting in a general manager position, but we're looking to hire the general manager and a maintenance supervisor. And then under the Guam Museum, we have 3. Also on the government side, we have the museum administrator and the 2 museum aides. But
okay, but those are going to be filled. You do not.
Those are positions that are filled currently. Right
are
now,
not filled.
we have currently, and the ones I mentioned are the ones that are going to,
Okay,
we look forward to being filled.
Hold on, Ms. Arceo. Senator Kelly Mars. The bill is in reference to the CAHA. Can we just stick to that? If we want to talk budget, I can ask my budget folks to come down and we can show the budget. But let's not talk about this budget, about your agency. I just want to stick to the bill so we can move along. Still got one more bill after this. I still have
Yes,
questions I want to make.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, but there was the implication that we're well funding CAHA and DCA, so I just wanted to point out that we have a lot of building up to do in those areas. They've been severely crippled for many years. Thank you. And also just to clarify, and this should just have a very short answer, for the head of delegation of, was this an automatic simply because you're in DCA, or did it involve another process?
From what I understand from previous FESPACs, it was automatic. When CAHA was under DCA, that names the president of DCA as the head of delegation.
But this time around, did you receive an invitation, or maybe even in the past an invitation from the governor? Is that the normal process, do you know?
I know that I received an appointment letter appointing me as head of delegation.
Okay, so that helps clarify that it took a letter of invitation, and something like that might still need to be straightened out, or might still be within the purview of the governor to determine the head of delegation.
That's correct.
So also mentioned earlier, there was this false dichotomy to say that, certain things have to be one or the other. We've covered pretty well the fostering of real change, real fostering, real stimulation of the arts through this. And I must point out, even though my heritage is Norwegian, German, and English, seeing the vibrancy how grow for Chamorros. I mean, I grew up here. I know that when I was growing up, there weren't these festivals every week. There weren't these dance shows every week. There weren't these language competitions on a regular basis. There just weren't these public expressions. And seeing the Chamorro culture revitalize, even though I'm not Chamorro, it changed in things for me. It made me appreciate my sense of identity, and it made me, so I think for the rest of the community, there are many that are inspired, be they Chamorro or not, be they other Pacific Islander, be they Norwegian like me, or English like me, or German like me. It causes all of us, I think, to start looking for that sense of cultural pride and to just appreciate the arts in general. So I just wanted to challenge that false dichotomy, but I'll withhold from asking the question in the sake of time. So, and you also have made an important case about masters and apprentice, and I appreciate my colleagues for also bringing that to light. It's very important in maintaining the culture from generation to generation. I think it's this whole concept of the identity being able to be fostered in isolation. I think that's a very problematic framework that was mentioned earlier, that if we stay isolated and we keep all of our money here, somehow that's going to be better for us. I did want to ask Dr. Flores that, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for that question. Well, I'll get back to that at the end. I mean, all of these visual things, so that's what I wanted to ask about. These visual things, murals will fade. We're already seeing them chip away from our typhoons and stuff. Tangible forms of art do and can diminish. But the intangible is passed on from generation to generation. So earlier I made a statement that if the percent for the arts and other parts of CAHA only restrict themselves to visual arts, that really it discriminates, or at least disadvantages those indigenous forms of art, very few of which are visual arts. So I wanted to ask Dr. Flores if you see that. If CAHA and the percent for the arts kept their focus only on visual arts, does that disadvantage Chamorro traditional arts or other art forms in certain ways?
Short answer is yes, because when I was in on the formation of the Percent for the Arts legislation in the beginning, and we followed what was generally followed we took several states' examples and looked at it and modified it for us. At that time, everybody was focusing on the visual arts, but that was, 1988? So things have, the Renaissance started at about that time. So we really need to support our intangible arts, and that is a disservice if we do not expand it to that.
Sijus Maasi for your answer. And maybe as my last question, and I appreciate the chair's high level of tolerance for all of my questions in my very lengthy opening statement. Can you provide a little description about where our arts were at? I mean, you did just a little bit here, but prior to, or even our early years in FESPAC, I believe that we actually sent modern art dance troupe in the early years, because I think we're so vibrant that FESPAC has made such a difference that so many of us don't even know what we owe to it. That the youth that I taught at the university, it's been their whole lives. They don't know what it was like to live growing up in El Nino the first time around, or what the arts were like without festivals every week and language competitions all the time and so forth. So if you could provide just a little bit of the explanation about that.
I'll just give you a couple of short advantages. Growing up here in the 1950s and 60s, I remember my sixth grade class, we were celebrating some cultural day or something. We did hula. You know, that was our concept of what we were. And then early days of FESPAC, they were just, it was through the governor's office. So they recognized certain people through their staff or what they knew. So Tanilena Benavente, the weaver, was the only one that went in 1972. And then I know that as we started to be more official, I did interviews with these early artists, and Leonard Ariarty was a teenager at the time, and he says, we went down there to New Zealand, I believe, and people looked at us funny because they had a Pala Pala band with his family, and they sang, "How much is that doggy in the window?" You know, so that was where we were. And at that same festival, the university performed in tights with lights. You know, it was very, very modernistic. So we didn't have that concept that we have now of being Pacific Islanders. So yes, we have come a long way.
Now, I just think that those are so powerful for people to hear, and how maybe most of us just don't even understand what has happened on this island and for our community and for the Chamorro people over the last several decades. Sijus Masi and Mr. Chair, I will finally turn it over to you.
Senator Reese, you have one follow-up.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I just want to add that the law right now, I know the rules need to be amended, updated, but the law is very clear that arts includes our traditional arts, and they make a list of them, and they say that canoe and navigation, fishing and hunting, healing arts, weaving, plating, wood, stone, shell, and bone carving, blacksmithing, performing arts, and others that CAHA will approve are going to be recognized as our arts. And so I think that legislatures before us have recognized this, and it's not, they're not being ignored. They're supposed to be included. So if your rules are prohibitive of that, then I agree we should change them, but they're supposed to be included by our law.
Thank you. You know, earlier, Mr. Say, you brought up 30 years, now Caja's going to be in charge. Sad. It took 30 years. Huh? It shouldn't have happened. But that's water under the bridge. I understand where Judy, Miss Flores, and Ken were talking about promoting the artists, promoting the culture. And I agree with what Mr. Leongreo said. We should have a place. Identify a park. Don't need to be at Chamorro Village. Identify a park. Do it. Why? Because the House of Chamorros in San Diego is trying to promote that. And they're asking for money. And it should come from Caja. It shouldn't come from TAF. It shouldn't come from anybody else. Because if you are the agency that's leading, either lead or don't work there. You know what I mean? Just do your job. When my colleagues talk about the budget, understand your fiduciary responsibility, manage it correctly. You know the money's scarce. Don't come running to the legislature saying we need additional funding because we poor planning. The monkey won't be on our backs. It'll be on yours. If this bill passes, you have that responsibility. We'll just be overseeing you, be watching and trying to find a way to help you, identify a source of funding. But please don't be expecting that when you give your rules, you give whatever, whatever you propose to the legislature, understand you have a role to play. This current administration broke up what was combined. So when one of our colleagues talked about your budgeting, of course it grew, because now you're all separated. And there's not a lot of money in the pot. So just understand that. Work with what you got, and then we will see you, and we'll see you next year, real soon, when you have to submit your budget anyway. And then we work from there. All right? There's no one else to testify. The committee will conclude the public hearing on Bill 249-35. The committee will continue to receive testimony for the next few days. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation Housing via email, Senator Joe S. @gmail.com. Jesus Masi for your attendance and participation in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. It is now 11:12, and this concludes the public hearing on Bill 249-35. Thank you. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation Housing will continue this public hearing. Now we will proceed to Bill 210-35. That was introduced by Senator Therese Terlahi. Senator, if you could please give your opening statement on your bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is an act to appropriate the balance of the Hospital Capital Improvement Fund to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority for capital improvement projects. As you know, this fund was created during the recent budget, in the recent budget law, and it sets aside $10 million of excess 2019 revenues for capital improvement projects at the hospital, which were not funded at all in the 2020 budget. So we all know that GMH has had numerous long-standing ongoing challenges, which include the maintenance of its old facility. And there have been some improvements to GMH, but many, many challenges. So for 2 fiscal years in a row, GMH was denied funding requested for capital improvements and appropriated significantly less than its total budget requests. In 2019, GMH requested a total budget of $242,000, but only received $242 million, but only received $30 million. This appropriation did not include funding for capital improvements. In 2020, GMH requested a total budget of $190 million, but only received $28 million. Earlier this year, GMH leadership, during their oversight hearings and again in budget hearings, were asked to identify their top 3 urgent capital improvement projects, and they did. And they stated that these were the roof repair and the electronic health records, which was a CMS requirement, and the electrical panel at the hospital. Now, they have made efforts to address some of these items, but the EHR primarily has been not yet addressed. $10 million, according to GMH, will be far short of what it needs to complete the electronic health record system. But I think they need, in order to proceed with procurement of a record system, or even what it will need to proceed with the procurement, for example, experts or other, to develop the RFP, they will need money as soon as possible. The deadline for the electronic health record system, the company that currently manages this system is phasing out this system. So GMH will be unable to remedy any issues that come up or address any issues with their EHR. And thus it puts GMH at risk for losing the Centers for Medicare accreditation, and thus puts GMH at risk for losing Medicare money. And that's really the goal here, is to make sure that GMH never loses its Medicare accreditation, because the government of Guam, quite frankly, will not be able to afford what Medicare is currently providing GMH. And so we need to ensure that that funding source is secure by complying with the CMS requirements. So this bill, again, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that the fund that was created during the budget law says that the $10 million will be deposited there, and this bill is to take the money out from this capital improvement fund and allocate it specifically to replace the electrical panel and necessary generator, to repair the roof, and to procure an electronic health record system. Situs Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Lai. We have 2 individuals that have signed up in support of this bill. We have Mr. Sidfrey Lansangan and Mr. Ken Leanguero, but I know Mr. Leanguero had to depart. But I'd like to also continue to recognize my colleagues that are still here. Senator Moylan, Senator Kelly Marsh Taidnu, Senator Peter Terlai, Senator Pen Rigel, and Senator Telu Taidwi. Mr. Lansangan, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all of you, honorable senators. I have a happy Thanksgiving yesterday, and I hope all of you as well. Well, yes, I support this bill to release the balance of the fund to GMH for the capital improvement projects, specifically for the three issues that Senator Terlaje mentioned. Well, in case of the electrical panel, GPA have inspected this panel a few months ago, and they stated that it's still good. And the technology now, you can buy refurbished parts that are still okay, or new parts. So why do you have to spend $8 million or $10 million for a new electrical panel? Second, to repair the roof. Well, what they're doing is wrong. See, what they did is put styrofoam on the roof and patch the concrete. That's not the right way to repair the roof. You know, based on my experience, because I have houses in Philippines and here, every time we have leak on the roof, we scrape or expose the cracks on the roof, grind it or sand it, and then you grind the part of the crack and inject epoxy adhesive. It will seep and flow to all the place that is needed to repair. That's the proper way, not patching and patching. That's why we will have the same problem, because they're doing the wrong thing. We're just spending money, and it's not hard to do that. You know, even their own people can do that. They can order the material here. And they're making it a big issue. Reminds me of the old saying, if you want something done, there's so many ways. If you don't want something done, there's so many alibis or reasons. You know, sometimes if the intention is to build a new hospital, they'll never repair everything. They'll never make it right. They will stage an act that is no good. It will collapse. But you see, the hospital is only built in 1977 based on the report by Post newspaper. We're now in 2019. 2019 minus 1977 is what? 2000 minus 42 years only, the hospital. Imagine only 42 years. Then they just saw some cracks on the columns, on the floor. They said, oh, it will collapse. How many years they've been saying that? For almost 10 years. They even condemned one of the building. They just saw the column, one of the column concrete, just some cracks and the river showing, oh, it's already gonna fall down. It's a matter of life and death. That's a lie. Big lie. You know? They don't even have any certification from engineering firm that they have the certification to condemn it, to justify their action. Those are just acts to just build a new hospital. In other country, leaders wanted new projects so they can have a cut or commission. Sometimes I'm thinking like that. My positive instinct is telling me, oh, they want new hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital. But on the other hand, my negative instinct is telling me they want a cut or commission. That's why, imagine another 500 or 700 million again, you will drain the borrowing capacity of the government. You know? And then what you gotta do? You gotta increase the fees again, the taxes, the property tax, the GRT. That's my frustration with this government. And even with the past administration, they're trying to stage an act. So many buildings were demolished, just like the administration building in front of the police department, and then rent to the private company. They demolished JFK and then rent again to the private company. And we're even paying the maintenance. But we have to pay the maintenance. Now we're leasing the property and we're paying $1 million for the maintenance. You know? Some things to think about, the senators. Because these are just easy if you will they have good intention, if the leaders have good intention, everything will be in order. And I would like to suggest, Mr. Senator, since you're limiting us to 5 minutes, I hope you will also consider to limit the questioning by your colleagues to 5 minutes only. Because, there's people also, waiting, for the other bills. And it's just fair and square, equal protection of the law, that you also limit the questioning, just like in the U.S. Senate. The U.S. senators, when they question the people making testimony, after they made the testimony, they're only limited to 2 minutes or 5 minutes. If they want more questions, then they need to schedule an oversight hearing. So that's just my piece, Your Honor, senators. And I hope, it reminds me of the leaning tower, because if there's problem with the hospital, it will lean. If there's problem with the structural of the hospital, it will lean, just like the Pisa Leaning Tower in Italy. I've been there so many times in Europe, and they preserve the building like 1,000 years, 500 years, 800 years. But us, we would like to demolish the building instead of preserving it, as if we have a lot of money in the world. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Nsangan. Senator Moylan, do you have any questions on Bill 210? None. Senator Kelly Mars? None. Senator Piru? None. Senator Clinton? Thank you. I know Senator Tello has. And that's the task force. Now can go to work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony today. I am in support of this. Definitely, we are. I think many of my colleagues are in support of this measure. And reading through it, understanding the issues, I'm just concerned, Mr. Chair, that BBMR is not here, as well as Guam Memorial Hospital is not here. And I'm hoping that, Mr. Chair, that we can get some kind of testimony from them. It'd be very helpful, is my comment, but I'm totally in support of this bill. And thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tello. And yes, GMH has responded that they will be submitting testimony. But we're going to find out what's their next excuse. The money's ready in the budget. The money's there. Just a matter of transferring. That's what this bill will do. And before I ask the author of the bill to speak, I'd like to first maybe I can ask a few questions, or actually make a few statements. Number one, what I'm concerned about is that I'm in full support of this bill. I want to get the hospital fixed. But what surprises me the most is that the priority is to fix the cracks in the roof. The cracks on the roof at GMH has been covered under insurance, that now the insurance company won't pay. And that bothers me, because if I'm correct, Guam Memorial Hospital is still being insured by the same company and renewed it, but they're not getting paid. And I'm going to have to ask that question. I'll ask that separately on the oversight, or the oversight chair to maybe take a look at that, because if they're going to keep going after the same insurance to be insured and you can't get coverage, then they need to stop. They need to think about that, because exactly what Mr. Nsangan says. Because when they did repair the cracks and they put the foam, they shouldn't have done that on their own unless they got clearance from their insurance to make sure that's what they're repairing. And then on the issue of the electrical panel, I agree with you totally, Mr. Nsangan. But the statement they made on the last oversight, it's not really that the panel is broken. It's because it's too close to the boiler, the risk, the hazardous. The threat to the employees and to patients, that's the threat. If they need to move the panel away or move the boiler, it's too close to water. That was the reason why. And I have nothing else more to say. And I'd ask the oversight chair, the sponsor of the bill, to make her statement, and we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nsangan, for your testimony today. I hear you and I agree with you that it is frustrating when we hear different messages, mixed messages sometimes, especially over the years, whether it's urgent, then it turns to not urgent, versus we are putting patients, at risk but yet, we don't have to pursue this for I don't know how long. So it is very concerning to me that GMH is not here, DOA is not here, or BBMR is not here, because I don't think the money has been deposited into this fund at this point, although the law says it shall be deposited. And so we may hear, we're going to wait until the audit's done, we're going to wait until we pay $83 million in deficit before this money gets deposited. I'm not sure, but I really appreciate that there are mixed messages. And what the legislature and the people of Guam need and deserve is a very clear message. Are we going to fix this? Even if we're going to build a new hospital, are you going to fix the roof for the next 5 years, or are we going to continue to have leakages while we have patients in critical care there? Those types of questions, I believe GMH was being very consistent about their capital improvement needs, but I'm just concerned that they're not here today and what the message is, in that regard. But I think that, regardless of any other concerns, we know that CMS has put it in writing. They need to fix their electronic health records. And this is going to help patient care across the board. Everybody agrees. Private physicians, they want to hook up to that also. And so if we could find a way that would set this, super highway for Guam electronic health records, that's even better. But at the minimum, we've got to set it up for GMH in order to meet this CMS requirement. And that, I think, is urgent. I don't want to hear another story in the news about the data system, stopped operating and they were unable to fix it. So I just think, we have to focus on patient care. We need to focus on what are we going to do, regardless of whether we build or we don't build. Are there minimum, requirements for this facility that we are trusting our families to, receive good quality care? And I think they are doing their best with this facility, and I commend them for that. But I think all of us in leadership, we need to be consistent. And so I hope that the money will be deposited the next time we check, that it will be deposited as required by the law, and that we will not have a legal battle in that regard. And I hope that my colleagues will support this bill to take that deposited money and put it into these improvements that need to be made right away. And that GMH, of course, will do, I'm hoping that they will do their part to do, as the chairman has said, to follow up with this insurance company that has denied, covering roof, that they will follow up, in all the other things and be consistent, whether GPA has fixed the electrical or they're still going to invest in moving it at this point or not. And I know they said they're waiting for this Army Corps of Engineer assessment on many things, but the Army Corps made it very clear. I mean, they see the same things that we've all seen for many years. And so it's just a matter, but they've also made it very clear that their estimate to build a new hospital, even if that is the plan at a cost of, $700 million, that would be, that we could not shortcut the next 5 years of, critical, urgent needs. And so I just want to see the government to be consistent in this regard. Sizuz Mase again, Mr. Lisongan and Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lai. There being no one else to testify, the committee will conclude the public hearing on Bill number 210-35. The time now is 11:34. The committee will continue to receive testimony for the next few days. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation and Appropriation and Housing via email Senator Joe S. Agustin at gmail.com. My office is okay. Sizuz Mase for your attendance and participation in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Thank you. Happy Good Friday.